Hey everybody, this is Nate Smoyer, and you're listening to the Tech Nest Podcast. This is the show where we sit down with the leaders in real estate and technology to find out what they're doing to transform the way we buy, sell, and invest in real estate. If you've got an interest in real estate and technology, stick around. You're in the right place. All right, we got a great show for you guys today. We have the VP of Growth at Buyside. She's a real estate tech veteran. Very few people who can say they've been in this industry longer than she has and has accomplished half of what she's done. Alissa Harper is talking about what Buyside is doing in order to turn data into leads, listings, and profits. They've got a great platform. They're working with some of the top brokerages around the country in helping them deliver better data and empowering agents so that the experience for the consumer is a better experience, especially on selling the properties. I'm pretty pumped about this. Kick back, enjoy the show. Well, hey, Alissa, welcome to the show.
Hey, good afternoon, Nate. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. No, I really appreciate you taking aside the time coming on to talk with us. I'm pretty pumped about this. I know we connected a while back, and glad we got you on the show. And actually, I got to say, I've of all the other guests, when they ask who else is going to come on the show, and I drop your name, just about every person has said, "Oh, she's great. You're gonna love your conversation." So other people have a lot of great things to say about you as well.
Lies, all lies, I promise.
Well, hey, I love to get the show started here. As with tradition, I want to give you the honors. Please let everyone know who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Nate. Alissa Harper, I am the VP of Growth for a company called Buyside. For those of you who aren't familiar with Buyside, we are a data analytics and marketing company. We work with about 75 of the largest brokerage firms in the country, really helping them leverage their data, specifically buyer data. And we do that to help them attract and capture additional seller leads, generate more listings within their brokerage, and then ultimately get more of those listings matched to buyers for more closed sides. So exciting work and a lot of great partners in the industry.
Sounds probably really easy, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Super simple.
All right, so I want to start with this one because I thought this might be a fun way to go. As I'm researching different companies, when people come on the show, I dig through LinkedIn pages and Facebook and Crunchbase and all that. And sometimes I just see something and I'm like, all right, let's start there. So I pulled this from your LinkedIn page. Hope I'm not catching you too off guard. It just says turning data into leads, listings, and profits. Can you tell me what that actually means? What are you actually doing that does that? And why do you guys think that's important?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to provide a little context as to kind of the problem that we're solving and how we got to where we are today. Historically in the real estate industry, the focus has largely been on the supply side of the market, right, or listings data. And there's really an incredible kind of untapped asset on the flip side of the marketplace, which is the buy side or the demand side of the marketplace. And it's really challenging for most brokerage firms to really do anything meaningful with that demand side data because it's just very inherently fragmented, right? You've got buyers that are out there searching for homes on brokerage websites or mobile applications. They exist within brokers and agents' CRMs, but they're also browsing on the portals like Zillow and Trulia, right? So you end up with kind of all these different buckets of really valuable information, but it makes it difficult for brokers to do anything with that, right? Mm-hmm. So Buyside really works behind the scenes. We connect with all these various data sources to create a really comprehensive view of all the buyer activity that's happening in the marketplace. And with that insight, we're able to help brokers go out to a prospective seller and have a more intelligent conversation about what the real-time demand is for a home just like theirs. And that creates a really compelling value proposition in helping get more listing leads in the door, to attracting more prospective sellers. And then for using a listing presentation to help an agent go in and really differentiate themselves by saying, yes, we're going to market your home and do all these things to try and attract buyers. But in addition, here's 55 people within our brokerage firm who we know are actively looking for a home just like yours. And I can intelligently market and reach out to those individuals. It also helps them with, navigating pricing discussions, right? So being able to say, hey, Mr. Seller, there's 55 buyers available at this price point. If we drop down 25 or 50K, you now have access to an additional 200 buyers that are in the marketplace. So conversations like that. And then ultimately on the back end of Buyside, being able to match that listing agent intelligently with that buyer's agent to get the deal done faster, and ideally keeping both sides of that transaction in-house. Okay,
so there's so much to unpack in all of that. We're talking better data. Let's just call. I'm gonna put some names out there. I mean, the discussion of what Zillow says versus what the agent says is probably a good price to sell for. We know that's a discussion. Let's not pretend that doesn't exist. We've got creating a collaborative environment between competing agents, whether same brokerage or different brokerage, right? Or is it all within the same? Okay. I mean, there's a lot going in there. How does this affect the user experience? What does it change on the user's experience, the consumers, the buyers and sellers? Does that change anything for them?
Sure. I think particularly on the seller side, so looking at the consumer experience, you go out there and 99% of brokerage websites out there are very much geared towards a buyer, right? Using listing inventory as the search experience. There's not a lot of very relevant or compelling content out there for a prospective seller. And so by working with these brokerage firms and using that real-time demand side data, we're able to create a search experience on their websites that's really dedicated to a prospective seller, kind of answering the two questions that they all ultimately have. The first being, what's my home worth? And the second being, do you have buyers for it? And so we can address that first question using AVM, so bringing in the Zillow's estimate, for example. We actually choose to display multiple AVMs to really highlight the fact that these are computer models, and it can be a good place to start. But ultimately, you want to take into account what's really going on in the marketplace in real time, which is all that buyer demand activity. And we really ultimately are driving that consumer back to an agent, to a real estate professional, to get an accurate assessment on the value of their home.
Okay, so that sounds like you guys have obviously really thought through this, and I totally understand what you're saying. Like, most platforms really are geared towards the buyer. Even the lead generation side of different platforms they're all generated to someone looking to buy. I mean, that's really what they're doing. Some have property valuation forms and all that jazz. But let's talk about like the turning data into leads and listings, right? So, because I want to understand how exactly are you building this picture of all these buyers in the field? Because I've had the conversation sitting with the homeowner, and he said, Nate, Zillow says 770, and that's what we want to list at. If you want the contract, that's where it's at. No movement, no budging. I'm like, well, yes, I want the contract. Of course, I want the listing contract. But we're listing 15% over what the market is going to support based on what I see in the data, and I had nothing to show them. So what does that conversation look like, and really how are you gathering the data to be able to paint that picture?
Yeah, great question. I mean, honestly, there's kind of an art and a science behind it, right? There's the raw data, and there's the numbers, and then there's how do you paint a picture and tell a story to a consumer while you're sitting at that kitchen table or that dining room table. So I think a big part of it is how we use that data to create a compelling story. I mentioned earlier that we use 3 different AVMs as part of the presentation. I think that's really key because it can highlight how broad a range you often see there. We've all sat with a consumer that says, Zillow says my home is worth 1.2 million or whatever that number is. But when you can contrast that with other AVMs that represent a pretty broad range, it really helps you explain to the consumer that, hey, this is a computer model. It's based largely off of historic public records data. And by the way, no computer can walk your home and see that you added that half bath or upgraded the kitchen, right? And so it really positions the real estate professional as the expert in that conversation. The data piece is extremely important as well, to be able to pull in all of that buyer data in real time to show, hey, here's what's going on in the market today. Here's what buyers are interested in by price point, by zip code, by neighborhood, by school district, by bed and bath count, and really have a more intelligent conversation with that consumer about how that home is going to do on the market based on the buyer demand.
That was awesome. There's so much in there. And so I can't help but think about this, as we talk about this and you're having those discussions. Obviously, this is a lot about empowering the the agent to deliver better information to the homeowner. It's less guessing. It's working on real-time data versus the last 3 or 6 months trailing data. And so, if there is any movement in the market from one direction to the next, you actually have something to point to show that. So I'm curious, a lot of markets right now are experiencing a little bit of a plateau. Seattle's in like an extreme case, right, where they're saying like 1 in 10 rentals are vacant, and
Wow.
and prices are dropping dramatically. Now they've also risen dramatically, so of course that's to be expected. But how does something like this play a role? Is it a heightened awareness, or is it just as important if a market shifts from a seller's market to a buyer's market?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think there's applications on kind of both sides, right? We just came off this kind of extremely hot seller's market where features like being able to feature a buyer's profile, right? So for a buyer agent with a buyer in the system, being able to say, here's my buyer profile, really show that they are a qualified buyer and get them kind of early access to inventory, which we know has been incredibly restricted. Get them early access to that inventory so they've got a better chance of getting a deal done. That's been an extremely popular use case, right? But now as we shift, and things are cooling off, I think it's equally important to be able to sit with a seller and show that, hey, buyer demand has lessened a little bit. We need to take that into account when we're pricing and marketing your home.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, right now, because in where I'm located, homes were selling, less than 2 weeks on average. And when that shifts to 3 months, it's no longer did we host an open house or is there a flyer, to blame it on. We got to figure out like what's happening, where is it at? And so I could see how something like this would really generate, really give the agent a better position to inform sellers at the same time being able to match those buyers as what, like you said. Let's talk about, because when I went to the site, I mean, it's like very forward thinking. It's data, you're using a lot of smart transaction type of technology here. But, realtors, and nothing against realtors, but they're not always known to be the most tech savvy. And you guys are pretty far forward in tech. So how are you having that conversation with realtors to get them to adopt this technology to move forward? What does that conversation look like, and what is shown to be most successful in being able to connect and get realtors to see what this is and know to use it? Yeah.
Well, I mean, personally, having been in the real estate tech space for 15 years and having done a lot of big enterprise-level software implementations at the franchise brand level, at the large brokerage level, as well as our entire team having experience in that space, we know that not everyone's going to be the same, right? From brokerage to brokerage, you've got very different cultures, very different kind of training and engagement plans. So really, you do have to kind of customize your approach based on kind of the unique dynamics of that client. I think what we've found work extremely well is kind of a top-down approach. So getting in there and working first with the leadership team, making sure that we've got a train the trainer plan, that you're working with the managers, and that you're really catering to each audience with what's relative to them, right? What's going to be significant in their lives. So if you're sitting down with a manager, it's how do you incorporate this technology into your recruiting retention conversations, right? Because that's what's going to resonate with them and have an impact on their lives. Right. If you're sitting down with agents, identifying those top listing agents, which are oftentimes influencers within the brokerage, working kind of one-on-one with them, getting them up and running. Maybe you do a beta first when you're rolling out the product so that you can build up some success stories and testimonials. Ultimately, I think agents are more influenced by their peers and the people that are killing it in their office than they are any outside technology company or even the management that's talking to them. So those are kind of been some keys that have worked for us in terms of rolling out and getting strong adoption with the agents.
Now, see, as a fellow marketer, I want to know all of your growth hacking tips and growth hacking secrets. Everyone wants to know, how do I just get this to explode so I get leads for, 3 pennies on the dollar or something along those lines. In your efforts and your conversations, and obviously digging from your experience, have you found there's any one particular channel that almost feels like this is the unicorn, this is the one we go after, or is this really a full tier multi-channel approach that's been driving the growth for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think to a certain degree, you do have to address all the different audiences and all the different tiers. As a company, our growth strategy has been to go out and partner with the largest, top producing, most influential brokerages in the country. So we've brought on people like, Douglas Elliman, Berkshire Hathaway, Fox and Roach, Crye-like, really industry leaders, and then really doubled down on making sure that they're super successful. So from a sales and marketing standpoint, I think what's been key for us is recognizing, again, that at the brokerage level, people respect what their peers are doing and they look to them to see what's working and what's been successful. And so highlighting those success stories has been really, really a key channel for us, whether it's doing, video testimonials, digging in and doing case studies to really, highlight the ROI, the hard numbers that our clients are seeing that are impacting their bottom line. That's been really impactful for us in terms of kind of getting the word out there about Buyside and reaching more of our potential customers.
That's awesome. So then that actually is a perfect segue into my follow-up question. Can an independent agent use Buyside, and is it built for an independent agent, or does it need to or do best with a team or from brokerage top down?
So right now, as I mentioned, we're solely focused on partnering with large brokerages. So we do not yet have an individual agent offering. It's a product that naturally, as you can imagine, thrives on large volumes of data, and you get those phenomenal network effects that happen within a large brokerage. And so that's really been our focus, at least now in our early stages of growth.
So why do you think it is some of these large top producing, because they're already killing it? They're the top producers. I mean, if I was looking for hockey stick growth, I want to find people that are underproducing, right? Because even if you deliver mediocre results, right, you get that hockey stick right in there. You say you quadruple results, but you're going towards the top. So incremental improvements is even that much harder to do. So something's really got to be clicking here. And you're going after the most successful. So why are they choosing to work with Buyside? What is the difference maker?
I think one thing that I've heard over and over in my last 10, 15 years in the real estate space is that at the agent level, at the brokerage level, to really dominate your market, you need listings, right? They pay dividends down the road because you have an asset to market. You now have something that you can advertise to get additional buyer leads in the door. And our product directly delivers listings. That's really the heart of what it does is generate new listings for an agent or brokerage. And so that's what resonates with top producers, right? A lot of them have seen their success by, bringing on more listings, and that's been their growth strategy. So I think that's why it resonates so well with them.
I feel like you got to say that one more time, that the listings is a marketable asset or something along those lines. And it's so right. I mean, it's so much harder to do it with a buyer because if you did it every time you went under contract, everyone would be asking, what about that? What about that house? What about that house you didn't close? But you're so right on the marketing, the listings. Obviously the leads, listings, leverage. I drank the KW.
I was just gonna say, yep. learned that early on from Gary Keller. I think there's a lot of different flavors or spins on that methodology, but it's true, and it's interesting because it's kind of part of this shift that we've seen for a lot of brokerages as they've had to navigate, the portals entering the space and starting to collect and kind of profit off of some of that data. So it's an interesting time, but I still think it's critical for a brokerage's success and for an agent's success to go out and dominate with listings. Yeah,
totally. Now, are you guys seeing any success in particular markets, or are you nationwide?
We're nationwide. We cover just about all the major markets right now. It's definitely a product that I've seen perform extremely well, especially in instances where you've got, high-end listings where you might not necessarily want to put them on the open market, but you need to be able to, accurately and effectively match them to potential buyers. So for example, our client Daniel Gale, Sotheby's out on Long Island, they have a lot of higher end properties that they market internally as, quiet exclusives. And so that kind of matchmaking on the back end really helps the listing agent look like a hero to their seller. Before the sign is even in the yard, they're able to get buyers in the door. and vice versa, right? The buyer's agents look like heroes because they've got access to hot new coming soon listings. So I see a especially powerful little niche there with the high-end market, but we've got clients just about all over the country.
Now, is Buyside only fit for single-family homes, or can you also facilitate with multifamily, office, commercial, anything else?
You know, most of our clients are heavy on the residential side, so we haven't really explored the commercial side of things yet. I think theoretically there's potential there.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, right away, you know, matching buyers. I mean, that's kind of one of the biggest that's one of the biggest challenges, especially in the commercial space. But I understand if you know if you're staying focused in the residential. But that's where my mind went right away. I was like, well, I mean, that's always the challenge in commercial. There's not one listing portal. There's not one listing place,
Yeah.
and some more disadvantages than the residential space from that perspective. Well, I want to know a little more about what you guys have done and the evolution over the years. I'm sure there's probably been something that you've either tried as like a new feature or another growth tactic, but it didn't work out. Is there something that has happened over the years where you went down this path and oh man, this is not good. We got to pivot, turn away from that. Is there a story you can share along those lines? You're smiling because that tells me that there is like multiple.
Yeah, so many lessons learned. I mean, not just specific to Buyside, but just so many lessons learned, I think, in the real estate tech space. I would say, one of the biggest ones that will probably resonate with a lot of players in this space is just finding that partnership balance where you have skin in the game from your customers is really key. And I think as a lean, mean startup trying to get traction, sometimes you get real creative on kind of partnership terms. Maybe it's a pilot, for example. But you've got to have skin in the game from your clients, especially when you're going kind of the enterprise route and you're partnering at the brokerage level. These are folks that are pulled in a million different directions every single day, right? They've got so many challenges running a brokerage. And if you're going to be successful in rolling out that technology, you need to make sure that your goals are aligned and that you've got skin in the game to get their attention and make sure that they're making it a priority internally. So I think that's one lesson learned that I can personally speak to.
That's so good. That's good. And maybe we could talk about some of those customers. I don't know if you're able to share, but how many customers are you currently working with? Yeah,
so right around 75 of the largest brokerage firms in the country. It's about 50% of the RealTrends top ranked brokerages. So we're fortunate to work with a lot of really, really key influential leaders. Across those 75 brokerages, we've got well over 100,000 agent users across those firms.
And in that enterprise product, is that on an annual contract, a subscription? What's the pricing model there?
So it's enterprise pricing. It really kind of largely varies based on the size of the brokerage, the different integrations that we're doing. That's something that we've really doubled down on as a company. In fact, in 2018, we doubled our integration partner count. So we now work with over 30 technology vendors in the space to pull in various buyer data points. That's something that we're really passionate about, just understanding how agents work. It's unlikely that we're going to get folks kind of manually adding buyers day in and day out. So we want to automate that. We want to streamline that process and pull in that buyer activity from all the different places that it's happening, whether it's the portals, whether it's open house applications like Spacio or showing time places like that. So a lot of integration partners to help drive that automation.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, I think that answers probably some questions I probably still had in the back of my mind of like, okay, so it's integrating with these platforms, but which ones, and how is this building this web of available buyers? And you just kind of answered that there of you've partnered up with these companies, you're able to share some data back and forth. And are you able to say which some of those vendors are that you're pulling data from that enable you to build this picture that's empowering agents?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got phenomenal relationships with a lot of the key kind of website and CRM vendors in the space. That's definitely a primary data source for us, capturing those, buyer saved searches, registered users, favorited properties. We work with players like Reliance Network, IDC Global, Real Estate Webmasters, folks in that space. Also on the CRM side of things, we just finished our integration with Contactually, phenomenal CRM company. So we're able to, ingest buyers from there, push the seller leads that we create back into their platform as well. I mentioned Spacio. They've been a phenomenal partner of ours to pick up all that buyer activity happening in, open houses. We also work with folks like CSS, centralized showing service, showing time, really kind of getting buyers from various ranges in that funnel, from just kind of browsing up at the top, which we capture from portals like Zillow and Trulia, all the way down to bottom of funnel when they're out touring homes with an agent.
Very awesome. That's so cool. All right, we're gonna shift a little bit. I want to talk some more money. Now I know that you joined Buyside a little bit after the founding, right?
Yep.
Okay, so you weren't necessarily.
I've been on board for about a year and a half now.
Okay, yeah, and Buyside's been around since 2010. Did I see that right?
Yep.
Okay, so there was some funding early on. I know you guys have raised some money, but it seems like largely bootstrapped. I mean, you guys have been growing on your own outside of that. But the rest of real estate, there is so much money pouring into real estate tech. And I'd love to get everyone's viewpoints on this, because I think, depending on which angle you're working, your perspective is going to be different than someone else's. But why do you think now is the time that so much emphasis on the tech around real estate, which is still very much a people and relationship business? Why is there so much emphasis on the tech around the industry?
Yeah, it's a crazy time, I think, for real estate tech. I mean, it's been a large kind of market opportunity for quite some time, right? The real estate marketing tech space, I think, is roughly a $20-30 billion industry. So I think it's nothing new for companies to want to come in and figure out how to get their piece of that pie. And in the course of my career, I've been, lucky to be part of a lot of different companies that have had kind of different fundraising. So both, publicly held, and now with Buyside being privately funded. And I think there's pros and cons to each approach. As you mentioned, we're bootstrapping it. We're a lean and mean kind of startup. The flip side of that is that we don't have, a board to answer to per se, and there's certainly pros associated with that in terms of overall strategy of the company, being able to do what's right by the customer, not being held to kind of milestones that maybe don't make sense for the company with where it's at. In terms of that broader question of kind of why now, why all this money getting dumped into real estate tech, it's definitely a super exciting time. I think it's largely being driven, though, by the consumer, right? The consumer experience in so many other verticals has just shifted dramatically with things like Airbnb and Uber and Netflix. I mean, we're totally living in this data-driven world. And real estate has really, for the most part, lagged behind in terms of consumer experience. And so I think consumers are kind of pushing and expecting a different experience when they buy and sell homes. And so tech companies are seeing an opportunity to fill that gap and fill that need. And so that's why now's the time, and it's a super exciting time to be part of it, for sure.
Yeah, and I think like some of the things that you mentioned, like, it would be possible for agents to manually collaborate buyer information. That's entirely possible, but it's incredibly inefficient. And the data would hardly ever be accurate. And these are the problems that software solves in a way that we just couldn't do manually. But the personal relationship with the clients is still there. And you guys obviously see that as still an important aspect to the business.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's so many interesting businesses being started now around this concept of, artificial intelligence, and there's so much talk and kind of paranoia, if you will, around the agent being replaced. And what I think is super exciting about Buyside is that we're certainly not advocating for technology replacing the agent. We are advocating for technology and data-driven insights empowering the agent. Ultimately, it is still a belly-to-belly relationship business. But, and quite frankly, I mean, the agent's role has evolved a ton, right? Like, they used to be this gatekeeper of data. Take it back to the listing book days when I first got started. And as a consumer, you had to go into a brokerage, sit down and look at the actual listing book. And I think agents and brokerages, to a certain degree, kind of had that baked into their value proposition. And that's really shifted dramatically over the last 5 to 10 years. So there's a lot of kind of buzz and a lot of paranoia about the agent and the broker being replaced. I don't think that's going to happen, at least not in our lifetime. But I do think it's important for agents and brokerages to embrace that technology and find ways to incorporate it into their workflow and how they interact with consumers to make that experience more easy, more streamlined, just a better overall experience.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. And admittedly, I think a lot of the services and products we've had on the show are probably geared more towards either around the agent or around the traditional path, if you will, in the transaction. But, me sharing what I appreciate about Buyside is that what you guys are working on is a way of empowering the agent to deliver a better experience to the consumer. And I can 100% align with that. I see that as a noble mission. So I think the work that you guys are doing is pretty cool in that regards. We are almost ready to move on to my favorite segment of the show. I feel bad for some of our regular listeners because they probably get used to me saying like some of the same one-liners over and over, just like that one. But so before we move on to that one, I want to give you an opportunity. If there's one thing we haven't touched about or talked about, about Buyside, or it's really important that you feel like we should emphasize about Buyside that people should know, what would be that one thing?
I think that the core message that I would reiterate to brokerages and to agents out there is that, a lot of folks tend to kind of shut down on things that they don't quite understand, right? And the word, big data or data aggregation, it can get scary to people that don't understand it, right? The reality is that innovation, that progress is happening whether you're a part of it or not. So I would say, take the time to kind of understand how it works and how it can benefit your business versus getting left behind. You don't want to be in a position a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, where you've kind of been leapfrogged, in the space by people that did lean in and attempt to kind of learn something that they maybe didn't understand. So don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. It's there to help you. It's there to help your customers. And at least just start a conversation around it.
That's so good. I like that. Walk into the unknown, if you will. Take the time.
Yeah.
It's very well worth it. All right, we're going to shift gears. We're going to play a game called For the Future. For the Future is a segment where I get to ask each guest on the show to give their best predictions based on the following 4 questions. Alissa, are you ready to play?
Let's do it. I feel like we need a little drum roll.
I don't have a drum roll machine. We can add that in after the fact. All right, question number 1. What does Buyside look like 1 year from now?
1 year. Well, we had phenomenal growth in 2018. We more than doubled our customer count, 200% revenue growth, and I think we're on a phenomenal trajectory to continue that momentum in 2019. So I'd be bullish in seeing those numbers be the same, if not even higher in 2019. I would expect us to expand our relationships with at least 1 or 2 of the national franchise brands out there. I also think from a technical side, I'm really excited about some of the innovation that our technical team is working on right now. We did a lot of scaling the business last year to really support the growth that we saw. And so now we have a pretty phenomenal foundation to start building the cooler, sexier features. I'm excited to see what's coming down the road from them. That's
exciting. And congrats on that growth. I mean, that's obviously a phenomenal year. Good on you guys. Question number 2.
Thank you.
Question number 2, what does the housing market look like 1 year from now?
Oh my goodness. I tend to be a little bit more conservative. A lot of folks are talking about another bubble or big burst. I don't think we're going to see what we saw in 2007 and 2008. I think we'll see a kind of a modest cooling off across the country. With that said, it's a crazy time, and I certainly wouldn't claim to be an expert on the housing market as a whole. So we will see. TBD.
Okay. And obviously that's a natural lead into the very following question, which is, when will the next big boom or bust happen?
Oh, my goodness. I honestly can't even speculate on that one. I'm smart enough to know the things that I don't know, and that's one of them. So it's an interesting time for sure in terms of economy and politics and all that. So another TBD for me.
All right, we're going to check in with you in a few months or something like that, and be like, hey, then we give you 3 months. What's the data say? All right, question number 4. There's no getting around this. What's one thing you believe will dramatically change or fade away in real estate as a result of technological advances?
Yeah. candidly, I think, there's, like we touched on earlier, there's a lot of buzz about kind of the agent being replaced. I don't think that will happen anytime soon. I do think that this kind of concept of a part-time agent is going to be an area that continues to see a ton of pressure, right? When you look at all these other industries where technology has come in to play, it's not the top producers, it's not the people that are providing rock solid value to their customers that are going to be impacted. It's the folks that are resisting that change, that aren't embracing technology, aren't putting the consumer first, and really treating this as a full-time business. They're going to see the brunt of this pressure, and I think we're going to start to see that go away. So I would see the agent population shrinking a fair amount, to be candid, but I think the folks that are providing value, I think consumers will be happy to continue paying for that value, and we'll see a smaller number of agents doing a larger amount of business.
Yeah, I tend to align with that. I think that the agent's role will be a little bit better streamlined. For those who are making money, I think they'll make more. And for those who aren't doing it, we'll probably dip out. And I don't think that's such a bad thing. I think that's probably good for the consumers. And we've had some other guests on the show who've said similar things as to what you've just said. So we're going to move on to the last three. Alissa, these are a little bit more focused on you so our listeners can get to know you a little bit. First one is, what are you reading?
Right now I'm reading Principles by Ray Dalio.
Oh,
phenomenal book. It's a good one. It's lengthy. I'm about 3/4 of the way through it right now, but it's been a phenomenal read. Highly recommend it. I got through quite a few good books last year. I would say last year my favorite was The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, if I can say that on this podcast.
You can say whatever you want. I don't like to censor people, so you go for it.
That was a phenomenal book. I loved that. Kind of counterintuitive to the title. It's really about caring deeply, but about a select set of things that really align with your core values. So I thought that was a great one, especially in today's day and age where there's tons of noise, tons of distractions out there. So I loved that one. I also liked Grit. I think it was Angela Duckworth. That was another really good one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was an excellent one. Yeah, I'm kind of personally fascinated by the concept of kind of nature versus nurture. And so these professional development books that kind of dig into the science behind some of these behavioral things that really drive success in individuals are super fascinating to me.
I think if you like Grit, then David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me.
Okay.
His story is phenomenal. Ben Kinney just recently interviewed him on a webinar. Shout out to Ben Kinney. But David Goggins' story, you want to talk about grit, he personified it immensely in his life, and I won't give any spoiler alerts, but I just recently finished that one. I think you'd love it.
Awesome. I will add that to the list.
All right, question number 2. Who are you learning from?
Learning from, man, I've been super fortunate in my career to work with some pretty phenomenal people across, the early days at Realty Generator and Market Leader through Trulia and Zillow, really phenomenal leadership. So I definitely have kind of my idols like, Amy Gutsinski and Spencer Raskoff of the world. I'd say, early in my career, I was able to develop some relationships with some phenomenal people that have really served as kind of mentors and coaches to me. Alex Lang's been, by my side throughout the years, been a phenomenal coach and mentor. Folks like Bob Bill, Ben Kinney, for example, he's, one of those people out there that never hesitates to pick up the phone or sit and chat with you and is just a wealth of knowledge. So those are all, phenomenal influences for me.
Yeah, we got to get Ben on the show. I mean, he's literally a mile away from where I'm standing right now. Oh
my gosh, no excuses. Although who knows, he might not actually be in Bellingham today. He might be out in the Alaskan wilderness. You never know with him.
I'm gonna text him and be like, all right, Alissa said you got to get on the show. No excuses. We'll make that happen. All right, last one here. Who inspires you, or what helps keep you inspired?
Oh goodness. There's a ton of inspiration within the industry. People like Sherry Chris have been a phenomenal, source of inspiration in terms of how she's navigated this industry. I think she's definitely an idol of mine. There's inspiration honestly everywhere, though. I don't think it necessarily needs to be in a big iconic figure like that. It's, the folks that every day are getting up and, hustling and grinding and getting shit done, quite frankly. Many of them personal friends of mine. Amy Youngren's a phenomenal team leader in Keller Williams out in Toronto, been a good friend of mine, and I'm absolutely inspired by what she does day in and day out and how she's grown her team. And, specifically folks that have pivoted in their careers, in their lives, I think that's incredibly admirable, and something that we're all starting to, having to experience as well. Even the folks at Zillow Group, they're in the midst of a pretty big pivot for that business as well. So I think being able to navigate that personally and then at scale for an entire business is incredibly inspiring.
Nothing short of phenomenal. Alissa, this has been awesome. Everyone was right about you. You are pretty cool. I agree.
Likewise, Nate. It's been a ton of fun.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. Before we head out, I don't want to leave without giving people a way to connect with you as well as learn more about Buyside. Where do they go? How do they reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the platform for that. So www.getbuyside.com is our website. You guys can reach me personally at Alissa, ALISSA, at getbuyside.com. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, and we'll put that in the notes below. We'll have some links wherever this is posted. You'll see it. And I really appreciate your time. And we'll have to check in later to actually get your predictions, because we're not gonna be able to hold you to your predictions. So we're gonna have to chase you down. Got to give us an answer. Time's up. So
fair enough. We'll circle back in a few months.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, and then hopefully we'll catch you around soon.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Nate. Really appreciate it. Take care.
You bet. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening to the TechNest podcast. Hey, don't forget you can get on the email list so you never miss an upcoming episode. That's technest.io. That's technest.io. Get on the email list. Go to the App Store, whether you found us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you found us. Leave us a 5-star review and share it with your friends. And if you've got a guest or someone that you'd like to recommend, or if you think that you'd be a great guest on the show, hey, send me an email, nate@realteampanda.com. That's nate@realteampanda.com. See you guys later.